the cases involving classified documents. They pulled an FBI
Glad you're in town.
on Morrow.
Glad you're in town.
The helicopters and the automatic weapons and they let Hillary escape and they let Biden escape.
I know I took the
Okay,
good donut.
Biden had
I took
absolutely
the good
no
donut soon.
authority as a United States senator to take any of that stuff home with him. Okay, none with as vice president. He had no
He
authority.
didn't have the mental
And
capacity.
they said,
to
no,
know
he's
Yeah,
got
even back
dementia or something.
But he has the mental capacity. I know president.
Okay. Shalom Aleichem, everybody. It's been a couple of weeks since we've been together. Really, if you add on to that Pesach, it's quite a few weeks. So it's good to be back, and it's good to have you back. Today's share is entitled Behind the Scenes of a Halachic Wedding. And I hope all the Jewish weddings we go to are halachic weddings. But I'm emphasizing the point because until you really experience one from behind the scenes, there's so many things that go on at a wedding. And I'm not saying inside the kitchen of a wedding, the kashrus, but just the halachas that go on at a wedding are many.
So do you think if you've never made a wedding, you can paskin on those kind of showers?
Good question. I'll get back to you in a moment. Let's go through this. Now, Baruch Hashem, very lucky, married off my oldest child. Yes. 10 days ago, a wonderful young Talmud Chacham. And I'll set the scene for you. Obviously, you prepared a lot of things for this date. So the wedding begins with what you call the Kabbalah's Panim, or some people call the Shmorg. So I remember I had my game plan. Look, all the weddings, you could go to the Shmorg and enjoy a Shmorg. My child's wedding, I can't touch the Shmorg for two reasons. Number one, there'll be people coming in, and if I'm involved, eating, it's harder to interact and spend time with people. So I was totally focused on spending time with people. B, I did have extra clothes just in case, but I didn't want to have to go to them 2 minutes in by spilling something. And my wife, I'll never hear the end of it. So I made sure to eat before. I made sure to eat before the shmorg, and my plan was not to eat a thing at the shmorg, which Baruch Hashem, that I accomplished. But what I didn't fully anticipate was how busy I would be during the shmorg. During that Kabbalah's Panim, probably in some ways even more busy than greeting all the people coming, I found myself busy with working out all different things with the Eidim, with the witnesses for the wedding. Now you might ask a question, Rabbi, you can prepare these things ahead of time, right? When my child got engaged, one of my friends gave me a whole list of all the kibbudim, which I know myself do, but gave me a whole list, a chart you can fill out. And I did that before the wedding. I went through every kibbud, filled it out. Great. But here's why it gets busy. Is because, first of all, my wedding was made in Monsey, and there's lots of traffic that could happen between anywhere in New York and Monsey, which is in upstate, the edge of upstate, especially if you go on the GW Bridge and the like. So, not everybody made it on time. Now, let's spell it out. At a Kabbalah's Panim, at the Chassan's Tish, they usually do two major things. Number one is you sign the Tanayim, this contract that you make, which that you need to have two Eidim sign on that. Also then Machab and another person to read it. but also very importantly, at the Kabbalah's Panim, you sign the Ksuba. That's really an important document, and you need to have two Eidim sign on that. There are some places where they're knowing that the people who sign on the Ksuba, the Eidim on the Ksuba, would also be the Eidei Kedushin. Brought down in some places they have such a minhag. In America, we don't do that, for the most part, and it means you have to have two sets of Eidim. You have to have the Eidim for the Ksuba, Eidim later for the Kedushin, to have that in mind. Okay, who am I going to use? So, all this is playing out, and on top of it, practically what people do with all these quote-unquote kibudim that you have by a wedding is it's a shared venture. Means I'm not the only one picking it. I'm picking some, and my mechurin,
Right.
the chassan's father, is also picking some. So again, we rehearsed this ahead of time. We spoke about this multiple times ahead of time. But, you know, when push comes to shove, when somebody's not here, so if somebody's not here from his side, which was the case, so then you have to fill it in, but Lav Dafka, am I going to put in one of my people, ask him for one of his people? And it gets complicated. This is just setting the simple stage. Okay?
Did you tell the people who are having kibbudim that they are having kibbudim?
Very good point. Very good point. I probably should have done that a little bit better. One good eitzah, which Harvey has, is if you know ahead of time who you're giving those kibbudim to, it will be best to give a person a warning. Hey, you're getting a kibbud at the Kabbalah's Panim. If you could please try to be there. Yes, but that still doesn't necessarily help for traffic or other circumstances.
The other flip side of that is so the person who has the keyboard and is stuck in traffic is really having a much harder time dealing with it because they know they got to be there and they're
Yeah.
not. So you're
Yes.
putting extra stress on someone you don't have.
Yeah. Now, this is just set up for what was going on by my shmor. So I'm not eating. Baruch Hashem, I'm greeting a lot of people. And also by nature, like I could do this usually in my sleep. I was a gabbai back in yeshiva in Chavetz Chaim for years. And there you're dealing with a place where you could have 400 people daven on Shabbos morning with all types of things, all types of chiyuvim, action. And, you know, I'm used to flipping them around, you know, processing, flipping, making substitutes. But here, it's a crowd. Look, I knew my guest list. I didn't know necessarily the other guest list. And people just coming in, and you have to make spot decisions. Okay, who's here, who's this? And there's a timing issue. You want to get the chasna moving. We were trying to make it before Shkia, which Baruch Hashem we did. So all this is unfolding. I'm setting the stage. What was going on? Amongst this, it ended up that I believe we postled close to half a dozen sets of Eidim.
Because they're all related.
Yes.
To who?
Now, it was absolutely fascinating. One after the other, we ran into problems. So, one thing I want to do this morning is go through the basics of Hilchos Eidos and discuss, therefore, where it comes about. I had so many issues during my Kabbalah's Panim. Part two is I want to get into a broader issue relevant by every single Jewish chasana. Then I'm going to get into other parts of the marriage ceremony and stuff, people involved in it, and all different issues that come up. And this way, I think, once we go through this topic well this morning, the next time you go to a wedding and you're sitting, eating, enjoying a shmorg, which you should because you're a guest. You're not the one sweating away. You know, you think the biggest part of a wedding is sweating and paying the bills. It's definitely part of it. But just orchestrating and putting across the finish line a valid product, you know, of what to do is an important thing.
This one was a little more UD.
And you can also now notice, nuances, whether it's from the Chassan's Tish or later when you're sitting at the chuppah and they call people to understand what really is going on behind the scenes. That's my goal for today's share. Now, I found there's a fascinating sefer called Nisuin Kol Chasa. And in this sefer, they compiled a list of people who are halachically pasul edus by a wedding. That list includes 68 people.
By name?
By name. There's a warrant right here. 68 people who are disqualified from being Edom.
Bernie Sanders.
And then I'm going to show you the clause. Now, my dear, the list that I'm talking about are just relatives. Of course, there are other people that are disqualified for edus based on their actions, and that list could be even bigger. Now, hopefully, that gets tricky too. Sometimes you don't know that a person is disqualified for his actions. So, okay. It's a whole discussion. A lot of times the Masada Kedushin turns to the Edom, asks them two questions, or makes two statements. Firstly, he asks if they're related to each other, which, is the last ditch. Like if you didn't realize in a relationship, they better figure one out. I don't know, But two, right? Many times at weddings, the Edom could meet each other for the first time right before they're about to sign or see something, and they better quickly do Jewish geography. Hey, are we related or not? You could definitely have a case where two people show up, but they start asking questions. So usually that question is like just a last minute quick question, but it is definitely kedai to think if there's any connection. I'll get to that in a moment. But the other point that usually Masada Kedushin makes to an aid is he tells him a line, you should be mahara b'tshuva. So even if he was a gambler, he was this, or there are other things, a hearer tshuva helps, which is a whole discussion. But I think it's them, the Ramosha used to do this. And would tell people, the Edom, it's a big deal signing and being a witness. A witness to a wedding is a very, very crucial part. We'll talk about this more later. But if two people would get married without Edom, there'll be an invalid Kedushin. You must have two kosher Edom for that marriage to take effect. You need two kosher Edom on the Kedushin. You also need for the Ksuba. But the Kedushin, that's the most important. And I'll say it one step further. Most people don't realize this. In the world today, if I ask you, what's the most chashuv kibud by a wedding? Okay, so Masada Kedushin, the rabbi, Rosh Hashiva, whoever is doing that, obviously that's he's the one in charge. Pascal on the Shaila Day is the most important role. But aside from Masada Kedushin, what's the most important kibud? What's the greatest honor by a wedding? So people will say different things. They'll think, reading the Ksuba, reciting a bracha, first one, the last one, especially if you could do chazanas. The most important kibud by a wedding are the Eidei Kedushin. Those two people you're calling up to stand under the chuppah to watch the man put the ring on her finger. That is the most crucial part of a wedding. And those, you want to be mechabed somebody, that's the kibud to do, the ultimate. Now, you want to pick your biggest gun. I'll get to that in a moment, what happened. Now, this list of 68 people who are possible because of relatives, it's very nice. They even broke it down into 6 different categories. First category they have here on the list are parents. Parents included are step-parents, including grandparents, great-grandparents from any side. All those permutations come out to 14 people. Okay? So grandfathers, step-grandfathers, v'chulu, all those are possible to serve as an aid.
Lineal descendant.
Huh?
Lineal.
Yes. Next one are children. Again, includes stepchildren, includes son-in-laws,
These are brothers and sisters.
grandson-in-laws, right, within or not necessarily blood related, right? A son-in-law or a grandson-in-law are not blood, but they still fit in onto the category of people who are apostle eidos. He put it in a subcategory as going down generation. Children. There you get another 14. Makes sense. Same.
Is the base the chassan and kala, or is it the parents?
Chassan and kala. But of course the parents are going to play a role because I go up, I go down. The next set you have here are siblings. Yes. Okay, you have a few more there. Brother, your brother-in-law, your brother-in-law from your wife. The 4 more, that gets up to where they have 32 different people who are on the not wanted list. Not just your mother-in-law. No, mother-in-law can't testify for a different reason.
No women are allowed.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's why.
The next one, next level they have
That's a no-brainer.
are the uncle level. Okay, your father's brother, your mother's brother, your mother's brother, your mother's sister's husband, v'chulu, right? Also going up generations, great uncles and the like. By now we are up to 44 different psulim. Yeah? Then you have the nephews, the great nephews. V'chulu, v'chulu. At my daughter's wedding was my daughter had her great uncle at the wedding. It's my great uncle, it's my mother's uncle. Happens to be the way the family plays out. My mother's mother was the second to oldest in her family. And her youngest, my grandmother's youngest brother, probably 15 years older than my parents. So Baruch Hashem, he's there in his 90s. He was able to be at the chasna, and it was a big deal. So my daughter had her great uncle at the chasna. Now, again, then you have more psulim, great nephews, v'chulu. So it comes out on people, the Ikar Adin Apostle, are 68 permutations. 68 different people. Yes?
So the closest relationship that could do it would be a first cousin?
No.
No.
Yeah, l'chora, that doesn't work.
So he just made do.
Yeah, that guy's there too.
The second
The last one. Second cousins.
you identify the uncle and the nephews of the chassan or kala, but it would not be, it has to be a male relationship?
No.
In other words, it couldn't, so how, it could be going, let's say, through the mother's family, which was.
Yeah, that works too. Either family. So we're talking about a male testifying.
To solve this problem to a great extent,
Yes.
you should not marry into a Pakistani family.
Hold on. Harvey, that was
But this was a little more intense than most.
Harvey, it's going to get worse. Trust me. Hold on. You're too quick on that comment. Now, if you look at the bottom of your sheet, there's a very important clause, which practically is very much upheld. All the way in the bottom there, it says, Yish hamnoim b'chlal no'ahazmin krovim mishpacha be'edei kedushin. In general, they do not let people testify even beyond the 68. Even people that are not possible edus. practically speaking, most Masada Kedushins will not accept the people beyond this list. So now that clause is very big. Because now you know what the Ikar Adin is. The Ikar Adin is quite extensive. It's 68 people, multiple generations, all different angles. But this clause is the biggest problem. Is practically speaking, Masada Kedushins also do not accept further than that. And the basic guidelines is that Choshesh people will make mistakes and they'll come to have other relatives. So you have to broaden this perspective. How far do you go? So let me play out what happened at this wedding. I'll leave out the names, though some people might, if you hear the names, of course, yeah. So my Mechurin is a Rosh Yeshiva in Dallas, Texas. And he wanted to give a kibbud to his friend, his fellow Rosh Yeshiva. They've been friends for decades. Wanted to give him a kibbud. Now, he wanted to give him 80 Kedushin. I'm not sure if he's watching this. Hopefully not. Now, I decided, who do I want to be Mechaber 80 Kedushin? Who do I want to be Mechaber 80 Kedushin with? So I wanted to be Mechaber Rabbi Luban. Rabbi Luban was flying in for the Chasna. So, and it happened to be Rabbi Neumann also flew in for the Chasna. Except Rabbi Neumann is Pasal Le'edus by me, because Rabbi Neumann is my wife's uncle, so he cannot serve as an aide. So I figured, okay, I'll give Rabbi Neumann bracha achrita, bracha. But Rabbi Luban, as it stands now, I'm not related to Rabbi Luban, so I wanted to give him to be 80 Kedushin. Fine. Now, my Mechurin ahead of time told me who he wants to keep him to. So he told me his list of people. So amongst his list, I figured out, okay, this person would be the best person to serve alongside Rabbi Luban as an Eid Kedushin. Who is that person? Rabbi Rodin. Rabbi Rodin is the Rav of Dallas, Texas. He's been a Rav for decades. Happens to be Rabbi Yachnis, his brother-in-law. We'll maybe talk about that relationship a moment later. And I thought he's also a peer of Rabbi Luban, a good friend of Rabbi Luban. So I thought that was a good shidduch. Rabbi Luban and Rabbi Rodin. Oh gosh, I'm giving names for everyone to hear. But they'll be the 80 Kedushin. Now, originally, my Mechurin thought, maybe it'd be better to give Rabbi Rodin a bracha. A speaking role, more prominent. I'll try to say, 80 Kedushin is most important. Okay, fine. Well, who would he give for an 80 Kedushin? Rabbi Pacht. His partner there in Dallas. So, okay. I think Rabbi Luban would fit better with Rabbi Rodin, but okay. But then I realized, you can't do that. His partner, his daughter, is married to a Neumann. My wife's first cousin. So he's the father of a first cousin through marriage. Now, is that in the list of 68? No. Is that something we do? So I checked with Masada Kedushin, who happens to be related to me, but I'll get back to that point later.
It's okay though, it's not one of the 8.
Right, we'll get to that.
Does the Chasam get the Masada Kedushin?
We'll talk about that too. Right? But, Lamaisa, we decided at the end to nix it. So, this person was nixed. He was one of the first people we nixed as an Eid Kedushin. He was Rabbi Pacht. But, okay, now he's Rabbi Rodin. Now, just for full disclosure, there is a connection between me and Rabbi Rodin. Go two ways, but the closest connection is my mother's first cousin is married to Rabbi Rodin's niece. But that's much further than the connection that I just gave. My wife's first cousin is married to the Rabbi Pacht's daughter. So, okay, that's how we got rid of one. Next, go through a few others just to show what went on. There was, we wanted to give a kibbutz to the shachan. It's Rabbi Wurm. Okay? That we figured would be from both sides, but from the chassan side. I want to give a kibbutz to my dear friend, Chavrusa, work together, Rabbi Brigida. Okay, so we'll have them both. Realize it's a big problem. Rabbi Brigida's mother is a chait. Rabbi Worm's mother, or the Worm's father-in-law, is a chait. Now those are first cousins. That's a problem. Again, not so simple where that would fit in this angle, but that one we knocked off. So I'm short an Eid Kedushin. So I picked it up, searching and searching. So then we had the idea, this Rabbi Zon, big mumcha in Chaver Kedisha, he's there. Perfect. He's not related to me. He's not related to Rabbi Worm. It's fantastic. But here's how it goes. His grandson married a Minkowitz, which is a Harris. And Harrises are first cousins with the Troppers. And my chassan's mother is a Tropper. So that one didn't go either. So, Harvey, you have to realize this is a merger of the Harris and Grimma families.
It just means you have to
First.
do more Eden to marry into the time. It's fine.
But,
You need to call rent and aid.
rent and aid.
There you go.
That's basically what we did. Now, Harvey, you realize this is all your fault.
Of course.
Had you been there, it would solve all the problems.
Yeah. For sure, I would not have been.
You're not related to anybody.
Yeah, but I would have been a kosher aid for different
Even if your
reasons.
name is Hanukkah.
You're not related to anybody, Harvey?
I would have been in that other category.
You're not related to anybody.
Now.
It's simple enough. Just use Geron for the.
Okay.
You're not related to anybody.
Okay. Now, you guys are all laughing. You think it's my problem that I'm in this Chavetz Chaim world where everyone intermarries with each other, and now there are no relatives left, no kosher Eidim left. It's a good joke. It's a joke that's been going on for decades. It's only getting worse. I get it. But I want to take revenge. I want to tell every single person in this room why there's a problem by every Jewish wedding.
We're all brothers and sisters.
Oh, okay. That's Achinu Beis Yisrael. How beautiful. But I want to give you a practical reason. I could passel every single wedding. Watch out. Hold on. Here's the argument. And this is a very valid halachic argument I'll show you in a moment. The halacha states like this. Halacha states like this. If you have a group of Eidim, your pool of witnesses, if in the pool of witnesses, let's say you have 10 witnesses, if one person in that pool is pasul, the rule is the whole group is pasul. That's the halacha. Nimsa echad kar v'pasul. The entire group is pasul. If you're a relative or if you're a gambler or whatever situations, it passul the whole group. Now, by monetary issues, it's some Rishonim hold the following. There's 2 steps to testimony. Number 1 is seeing the event unfold in front of your eyes, and number 2 is coming to court and testifying about it. So many Rishonim hold, okay, if you A saw it and B came to court together as one group, then this applies. By a wedding, there's no testimony happening in court. You're just watching the action unfold, and that's it. Maybe at a later point you're able to come and testify, but you're not doing that now. Most Rishonim though hold that just for seeing something by itself, You're not coming to court, you're just seeing something together. If a group of Eidim see it together and one of them is possible, then the whole group is possible. So let me make a big problem. Do you invite your relatives to a wedding?
Try not to.
Not that guy. Do you invite your relatives to a wedding? Of course. Right? You have people there at a wedding. You have relatives at a wedding. The rule is, if anyone in this pool is possible eidos, it disqualifies the whole pool.
Yeah, but you can't see any of them.
So, 1 second. So, if you have a relative, the father of the bride is standing up there, he's watching. He's a relative. Shouldn't that undo
No, you make
the entire
He's witnessing
testimony?
He's not part of the pool of potential AD.
Who said?
He's witnessing
You're only designating
He's Mahar Bavera
people
before.
to be the agent.
Who said?
Huh?
Who said?
Masada Kedushin is supposed to say that to the two Eidim.
That's right. You're supposed to say, these are the two witnesses, and there are no
To the
other
exclusion
witnesses.
of all others.
So, as always, I'm dealing with a quite sophisticated group. That's the answer to my question. But that is an important halachic step. It's very important for the Masada Kedushin to, when the Eidim come up, and what's very interesting is he's really, the Masada Kedushin is really turning to the Chassan and instructing him that you are designating, because he's the one doing the action, you are designating these two people that we're calling up, that we checked that were not connected, not related. I'm choosing these two to the exclusion of everybody else. I'm excluding everybody else. These two are my witnesses, not everybody else, and therefore I have two kosher Eidim. But if you would have the situation when Masada Kedushin would not do that, then you might be running into a problem.
Gets worse.
That is the perspective of most Rishonim Achronim here on the topic, is that you need to specifically designate these two as Eidim to the exclusion of everyone else. Now there is a position held by the Ksos HaChoshen, who himself does recommend halachically in his piece that you should still designate Eidim, but he does give it tzad. Let's say the Masada Kedushin forgot to do that. Are they still married? So the Ksos has an argument that it's an automatic, what you call stam das, of the man doing the kedushin. That since halachically speaking, it's not enough. Let's say, true story. Before my daughter's wedding, we were for Pesach. We were in Nevada. So one day in Chol we went to this Red Rock Mountain, beautiful place.
Is that a casino?
No, it might also be a casino, but that's not where I went. I went to the mountain. So
No
I'm still kosher loitis, I hope. Now, on the mountain, like we're sitting on a hiking trail, all of a sudden you see people with like shirts about catering, schlepping up these like fancy foldable chairs. Next thing we knew, about 10 cowboys. My kids were all joking. Straight off Dallas. 10 cowboys in cowboy boots, cowboy hats, and blue jeans. And 2 guys wearing jackets. So we figured one was a chassan and one was his father. They were doing a wedding up there on the top of the mountain. Isn't that the best place to get married?
You're not going to be disturbed by the phone calls.
You're done with yeshiva the way you like.
Now, let's say you think people elope in Vegas and do it on the strip. No, these guys are doing it on top of the mountain. Now, let's say 2 people got married on the top of a mountain with seemingly no one else there. But their 2 friends were behind a rock. So they actually witnessed it. Halakhically speaking, that's an invalid kedushin. Even though you had an act of kedushin and 2 people watching it, halakhically that's not enough. Because the person doing it has to know that I'm doing an act of kedushin in front of 2 Eidim. Because otherwise it wouldn't work. So once anyway, the person doing that, the groom, is doing his act of kedushin, giving over that ring and saying Hariyam Kadeshli, that is the marriage. That aspect, if once he knows he has to do it in front of 2 Eidim, The assumption is he wants 2 kosher Eidim, and he doesn't want everyone else making a mess.
Is that why Hariyat is set sort of quiet in that plus?
Interesting
So
point.
only the 80 hear it?
So some might say that, yes. By different weddings, I'm sure if you have what they call a Yakasha wedding, where they're facing front, the chassan and kal's backs. So yeah, you're not going to get a good shot. You're not going to see it. Usually, you're right. By a lot of weddings, the photographer or some like little nephew or this, they get in the way. And unless you're sitting right there, you're not going to see it. Sometimes you're not going to hear it.
The condition himself is right there.
Right,
so
right.
it's-
But the point is, you do need, if without this halachic point of set aside these 2 Eidim versus everyone else, you could have a problem by every Jewish wedding of having psulah. So don't just make jokes about Chavetz Chaim, people being related to each other. You could have this by any Jewish wedding. You just have to take the halachic precautions to get around it. Now, let me throw a few other interesting steps at you. We talked here mainly about the Eidim on the Kedushin. We talked about the other Eidim too. But right now we're having this discussion of the Eidim on the Kedushin, which is the most important part. Now there also is Eidim on the Yichud. After they get married, they go into a private room, so you have 2 Eidim, quote unquote, guarding the door. It's interesting. There are some poskim who will say, for that you don't even need Eidim. Because by the act of Kedushin itself, it's not an action unless you do it in front of 2 Eidim. But once you're ready to do the Kedushin, and they're married, there are poskim, and it's interesting, I found that Reb Chaim Kanievsky quotes the Chazon Ish as taking this position. It's for Eidi Yichud, yeah, that you don't even really need Eidim. Which is interesting, a lot of times people are not as makbid when it comes to the Eidim for Yichud as they are for the other Eidim. The same thing, because the requirement for Eidim is not necessarily the same standard as it would be for the Kedushin or even for the Ksuba. Couple other interesting points I could share with you. So I'm standing there under the chuppah. They call Rabbi Luban as an aide. Okay, they're about to do Kedushin. Rabbi Luban asks the Masada Kedushin, I'll get to in a second who that was. His old Chavrisa. Can I see the Kala? Kala was, of course, wearing a veil. So when the Eidim asked if he could see her, so they lifted up the veil, saw her, then they did the Kedushin. Why is that important? Because you have to know the man is doing Kedushin to this lady. Now, if you're there at the Badakin, so you saw what she looked like before, put the veil on, now I guess Rachel and Leah, you can switch it with somebody else. But usually they say that's good enough, not necessarily to see that. Not every Masada Kedushin is makbid to lift up the veil and to see. Some veil, it depends on the intensity of the veil, you can see through it. But it was cute. Luban specifically asked if he could see the Kala, show him the Kala, okay. Then they did the act of Kedushin.
Do you recognize her?
Huh? I think so. Now, I'm not sure. Maybe not.
We're not sure about that.
Now, who was the Masada Kedushin? So it's interesting. Masada Kedushin was my father-in-law, Rick Rumba. Now, why is that allowed? He's related to me. So, right. The simple point is the Masada Kedushin is not a witness in any way. He's just the one putting it together. So he could be a relative of the parties involved. Now, it's interesting. There is somewhat of a discussion, I saw it brought down in the Sefer, an element of Ayin Hara, that maybe you don't want to emphasize, oh, this is a relative. They say it's better not to give a father, let's say, of the Chassan or Kala, the Kriyas Ksuba, because then he's reading his name. Oh, that's me. So that you don't do if you were, but Sada Kedushin, they say, is no problem. That even a father could do. That happened by my wedding. By my wedding, Repenach wasn't there, it was in the summer, and I convinced my father-in-law, my Rebbe, if he could be Masada Kedushin. First, he didn't want to do it, I convinced him. So that was a father.
Wouldn't that be a problem with the brother too, because he's got to read his father's name out loud?
Yeah.
It's for
But
a different reason.
yeah.
Different reason, but still a problem.
Yeah, but I don't think it's the same Ein
It's
Hara
not an 80s.
things, yeah. But the Maisa, also it's always important when you sign Edom on the Ksuba, make sure they know how to spell their names, write their names. The Ksuba is viewed, as an important document. Things are done well in that. You want it to be done perfectly. And a lot of times what they'll ask beforehand is someone to practice signing his name. Sometimes there are, issues with the way he writes it, and you have to check up on that. The spelling. This wedding happened to take place in Muncie. I didn't notice this till once it was printed. I saw on the wedding invitations, my wife wrote, had them there suffering. That's another name for Muncie. Same place. Right?
It's actually a municipality right next door.
Okay, but I checked the zip code. The zip code had both.
Right.
North Miami Beach, Miami. Right? What do you call this place there?
Right.
You can have both. So a lot of times it doesn't matter exactly, but it's interesting. The Ksuba is one of the only documents, practically, that you insist on where it was written, where did it take place. It's okay, you got another place. So these are all important little tidbits, to go through in a wedding that, and it's very shy. Sometimes people don't realize, and they could have relatives involved in this, and it's important. For the brachas themselves, that you can have a relative. There's no problem. A lot of times that's what people do. They give the brachas out to relatives. But for sure, for the eidos, that you want, the best people. And I'll just end with one. I'll have to end with a joke too, but sometimes a person's wondering, which, you have a choice. I could give the rabbi a bracha, I could give the rabbi the eidos, and have a non-rabbi do the eidos. Again, for both factors involved, when you deal with eidos, for sure Eidei Kedushin, Eidei Ksuba maybe not, but for sure Eidei Kedushin, it's definitely very kedai to make sure you have the best possible people involved in that process. That's an important process. That's what makes the wedding work. So that's what you need their Eidim. Yes?
Under what circumstances will the Eidim ever have to testify to this wedding? And depending on your answer, is it better to have younger Eidim versus older Eidim?
Very interesting question. Question for the audience is that the Eidei Kedushin, when would they need to testify about this wedding? And is it better to have younger Eidim versus older Eidim for future reference? Very interesting question.
9/11. We're stuck in towers.
Someone I'll answer your question by giving you a story. Someone just told me a story where a Bachar in Yeshiva went to a relative's wedding, and this Bachar was a younger Bachar and not so adept in the halachas, and he realized, hey, they asked him to, let's say it was on the ksuba, they asked him to sign something. Okay, so he signed as a witness. He realizes I'm related, I'm puzzle, not just the extra clause, I'm straight up. I'm on the 68th right here. And he was questioning about it. So he spoke to a Rav. Rav says, oh, Baruch Hashem, I'm glad you signed on it. Or they're the Eidei Kedushin. I think the case actually was an Eidei Kedushin. And he said it because unfortunately this couple is not from. What happens, unfortunately, the divorce rate is pretty high. What happens when they get divorced?
You don't give a get.
You don't give a get. They get remarried. Unfortunately, in a situation where you don't give a get and the person gets remarried, then the resulting children from that second marriage would be flat up mamzerim. But if there was a problem in the original Kedushin,
Just also out the whole marriage.
and it undoes the whole marriage.
Rabbi Moshe Feinstein.
And that was Moshe Feinstein's major move.
They got into a big dispute with
Right,
Rabbi Henkin.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Shh. He knows not just American law.
This is
Very
what
impressive.
happened in 9/11. A lot of
Yes.
they were prosecuting.
I'll give
Yeah.
They went back
So-
to Subas to find Sulam in the Subas.
Yeah. Yeah. So you do look back potentially on these things. You want things to be done Kedas
So you
did.
said you
A
should-
lot of times you ask who the Masada Kedushin was.
Maybe it's good to not have a kosher for that.
Yeah, but there's a lot of interesting things you look back and you check into, and it's really the job of the Masada Kedushin. That's why Masada Kedushin has such an important big job that he has to figure out. Are these two people? Especially if you're dealing with a second marriage, he has to look into: was everything done well in the first marriage? So that's when these things are going to come up. And a lot,
If you can't get back to those 80, then what happens?
you try to ascertain. It's very hard. The Edom on the Ksuba, that's clear. Edom, if you have the document. Edom Kedushin, you could potentially have video footage, but it's much harder to track that down. But again, what Rabbanim really go with is, okay, who is Masada Kedushin? Okay, if he was Masada Kedushin, he did things well. I'll end with one fascinating story. 7 years ago, my youngest daughter had a question about her name. Named after my grandmother, but right, I remember this. It was a very interesting question what my grandmother's name really was. My mother said it one way, and I had an aunt, great aunt, who showed me a letter from my mother's grandfather, great-grandfather, of what her mother's name was. And there's a discrepancy, and the name itself was a name that wasn't found.
Was it like a name?
And one of the things I went back to,
It doesn't matter. It's when you name her.
huh?
It's when you name
No, yeah, but I wanted to figure out what
Person
name
should
should I
name
name her before. I'm doing the research before it. And one of the elements I went to was I knew who my parents' Masada Kedushin was, and the name he wrote in the Ksuba. Like my mother, Zraya, was the Ksuba. It says this. And so I knew who my mother's Masada Kedushin was. So based on that, talked about it. I spent a lot of time. Very, very interesting.
Doesn't the Ksuba also include nicknames?
The most
Or-
fascinating psak within this whole circle is in the olden days, you still might find this. A lot of people used to write down in the back of a chumash or a siddur their lineage,
Oh, yeah.
their children, their grandchildren, the dates they were born. So my great-grandfather did that. Great-great-grandfather did that. And he had my grandmother there. And the name was different than my mother assumed was. And I went through a whole thing, figuring it out, working on this. Careful, my parents are watching this. But
Your mother went through life not knowing who she was.
no, it's a question of halachic, getting things exactly. It's important. All these things, accuracy in these things is important. Look, we do the best job we can. They assumed one thing, okay, but so you're right. Sometimes you do have to dig up things years later, and obviously it's much harder to do with people there. And even if you had the agent, they're gonna remember. Oh yeah, hopefully they will. But it is important when it comes to testimony. Jews take testimony very seriously. Halachically, Edom are a big deal, and Al Pishnaim Edom Yakum Davar is a major factor. And when you do a wedding, you have to realize that's one of the halachas they talk about is a Masada Kedushin has to really be a baki. Okay, there are some situations where you have a Masada Kedushin who may not be that well versed, but really it's best you choose a Masada Kedushin, you choose someone who's going to put together this wedding. He should be someone well versed and well knowledgeable about all the things, because you never know, things will go wrong. You have to do things right, and that's the most important kibbutz, most important position to choose by a wedding. Who's to be the one running this wedding, do everything right, and after that, it's also always important to pick good Eidim. And if you're ever involved in advising people in the process, it's always good. Advise them, choose well your Eidim. Thank you very much. Hope this was interesting, and to be continued next week.
Doesn't Ramosha also have like another percent to the opposite extreme
What are you
to
going to
be
talk about when your next kid
matir?
gets married?
Huh?
What are you going to talk about when your next kid gets married?
I did everything right that time.
Who else has since been puzzled?
I'll have 10 rows of alternatives. One here. Thank you, Ron. Thank you very much. Where? No, Blue Band was. Rabbi Naaman was actually. I couldn't.
I thought it was Rabbi.
Yeah, Blue Band was a condition, yes.
I know it wasn't
Rabbi
Rabbi-
Naaman could not. He's boss.
I know
He's
it
won the
wasn't-
68.
Closer than 68.
People
I
make
know it
mistakes.
wasn't Rabbi Pop because we were having a TTI reunion in the back with him until he was called up for one of the
But
brothers.
unfortunately, our story is something that people didn't want to go to the despair. It was too beautiful that our district begged.
He was called up for something. What was he called up for?
One of the brothers.
Rabbi Naaman? Yeah, that's okay. For sure, that's okay.
Well, I know. Debbie's middle name is Shana.
Right.
Okay.
My answer.
So when I was doing
My answer.
the Kula, I gave him the spelling. He said, no, it's not right. He says, there's no such spelling.
Question?
Shin, I and Aleph, kind of thing. So he used the authoritative way of spelling. Got married. Years later, Valerie got married. She wasn't sure that was not the spelling that she knew. And so she did all sorts of research. She couldn't get an answer. She even went to the extent of asking the Shiloh. He told her to go to Rabbi Lerfield. Now Lerfield said, like, "Sue, it's not that important. If I get it is, so don't get divorced."
There you go.
Okay.
That's a beautiful story. It's over. Okay, it's your side.
Anyway, my in-laws were downsizing. They were getting a lot of storage. So they had, my mother-in-law had her father's scripture. And he wrote down all the numbers of the and it was spelled exactly the way they added in the two.
That's amazing. That's an amazing story.
It's nice when it works.
When we went to Chicago for a bar mitzvah, my father was still alive, because family was all buried in Chicago. So it was a cemetery.
Are they
My
moving these days?
daughter was a little girl at the time, so she was the age of the bar mitzvah boy. She was
Proof that I don't trust my family on this stuff.
We're
It's just the work.
we had my father's parents foreign, and we had named my daughter after my father's mother. So we asked, what was Bubby's name? He says it was Sarah. Okay, what about a middle name? He thinks, she says, no middle name, just Sarah. So we picked a different middle name that we liked. So we're there looking at the matzeva, and all of a sudden, the 12-year-old blurts out, "Grandpa, Bubby's name was Sarah Esther, not Sarah. I was supposed to be Sarah Esther." And my father's looking at her. "Oh, yeah, I guess it was." And so she got named. She was named for a
The
person.
truth is, I know of cases, on matzevahs, they even make mistakes on matzevahs. I'm not sure matzevah,
Oh, for sure.
100%. Again, is Masada Kedushin, is a Rav making the,
No,
with
the family is telling
That
me.
comes about
I know family, it says that,
Dates
it's
and great.
it's basically for a thing, it says on matzeva, a grandchild of the Sam Sofer. Except,
it was a grandchild of Moshe, who was a sofer. Not the some sofer.
So when Avi got
That's
He
fine.
says it on the.
when Avi got smicha from Chofetz Chaim, he got a certificate.
Okay.
And when I saw it on his wall, I realized that they misspelled my name. My name is Elazar, and they spelled it Eliezer. I told Avi, I said, you call up Yeshiva and tell me you need a replacement. Because you never know when someone's gonna need to find out my name. They're gonna say, his name was Eliezer, not Elazar. So, they hemmed Yeshiva hemmed and hawed. I said, look, here's the deal. Until he gets a new
It was $5,000.
certificate, I'm not giving you another penny. Okay?
Money talks.
Huh? So the next year, when they did when they did them for the next year's class, they sent them a new one.
Well, the Shabbos after
Yiddish
your
names
Matzeva is a
are-
problem because
Yeah.
people go to rely on Matzeva, but who's putting the name on Matzeva?
Right.
It's
Right.
a generation away, and the person who you would ask is the one who's there. So there's less information at that point.
Real bigger question
I
is
had
whether
a
the name that
there are
was
many
really, whether they like
cases
presented
today.
going back to original records, like when they were born, probably the question
They
is
don't
to follow the name
bother
that they
putting
went by or the name they were given on their birth. Which one actually has more law freedom? So
I have
It
no
depends
it's not so
on.
question.
They have that.
Especially when it comes to Gittin, it's like
Depends on the
then you follow
context.
through. I'm like, don't care about whether giving
Yeah,
a
I
word,
know.
who I
So
called,
my,
who
so
I
my
like.
grand my
You know,
grandfather,
the way
my parents
things
were
work today
his
in
name
America.
I thought forever that his name was Muckle. I thought it
When I
was.
went to my uncle's funeral,
His name was not Muckle. It was called Muckle when he was a little boy by his parents, but he's more.
What is
My
it?
aunt,
Just make it hold
my
on.
aunt thinks it's Gittel.
so
I found Mount Barrett. It says Gila. Like, okay, I'm not even gonna get
My
this.
Someone got an
My
Aliyah
grandmother-
Shabbos.
She's known as Annie.
Wait, someone got Aliyah Shabbos.
Shabbos, his name was my mother instead
My
of
Name
grandfather.
or the main
Swedish.
or
So they finally, you know, they
Yeah,
figured
yeah,
they didn't even know what his
You check the name was
His name was really Henna.
Or Rabbi
My
Kier.
Walter was insistent it
So
must be.
that's the way.
That's it. Yeah.
You
It's
think
also
that's
strange.
it?
My name is
It's not
I
atypical.
swear, her name is Anna. Not Henna. Anna. Anya. No such name. I looked and is I think somewhat similar to it was a question. There's no Enya. Enna, but the grandfather, the great grandfather is thing.
Not Hungarian, right?
So well, my grandfather.
Not Hungarian, right?
Hmm?
Hungarian, no.
So his he had a good question. I had the exact same situation. So somebody was born with one name, but they were always called a different name. What's their halachic
Rabbi
name?
Friedman said it kind of depends on what the context is, if
circumstances are.
it matters.
Because my mother,
Yeah,
when my mother was
well.
born, her Hebrew name when she was born was Miriam Hollander, Miriam Bas Shmuel. But as a little girl, as a toddler, she was called Baba.
That's a
That's a
good
nickname.
name.
Which turns out that it was a nickname, but when she went to, and it was a long story. She ended up being registered in school, Bobby. She ended up being registered in school as Roberta Uriel Hollander, and it was always very confusing. What's her real name?
Right.
Like, what's her halacha?
See, I too have a Bubby burial. I am also cool like with the Vigilantes.
While we're
So I
discussing
was very
Next,
appreciative that my
bill
daughter
for my
did not
father is
read
next
her-
Sunday.
Next
Not
Sunday.
that
I am
it's
married
gonna
to
be
Baba.
then, you know,
I do have.
anyone wants to come, well,
Avi married a Chofetz Chaim family.
Right.
Are they related to all these people? No,
They're not related to me.
not yet.
Right.
Harvey, don't forget, there's also the Blenders who are now
Right, because Rabbi Ben.
distantly related
Ah,
to.
good.
The Blenders are related to a lot of people.
That's
Yeah.
the thing. Just like you get a good lawyer, you need a good rabbi.
The first marriage was done wrong.
Somebody
I short my stuff out, I'm not really related to
Did anyone ever digitize the Chofetz Chaim tree?
We're gonna get you married. okay?
I know somebody
Divorce
at
came
one
a number
point
of
was
years
working on
after
a
that.
Chofetz Chaim family tree,
Oh my God!
but like,
Jacob's been doing that years ago.
but like, there's no way that it's up to date. Not even close. It's a full-time job.
You're very good.
All right.
I haven't listened
You have to start over.
I
pretty
should start
much.
listening.
And it would have to be digital, otherwise you will not make all the connections.
Alright.
Problem is, they don't really have things that are made for like something.
Love
Like
that.
the data standards.
No, the problem is the software that they have for it gets confused when you have too many similar
How far
things
does it really go out?
that are there.
Okay.
Because you can even, it'll suggest like, Did you
Like
mean
his
this?
wedding.
And you'll say no,
That
but
would be
it'll
right
keep
back
doing
to
it, and
the
it'll keep
slide.
thinking that those two
We
connections
talked
are really
about
one
Decker.
connection.
The problem,
Alright.
Right, Becker,
He's a chick.
we're gonna go pack things up. We're good.
He's a
Lunch and
chick. His wife is.
His wife is Lou Ben.
Right. So I'm saying.
Rabbi, here,
That starts the
But basically, the subdivision would allow
the roads.
someone's
Cousins
first
through
cousin,
cousins through marriage.
Like here, how many people have been at the wedding if you didn't invite relatives?
It would have been cheaper.
Probably.
Well, Rabbi, here, the
You're really
Shabbos,
saving money.
the Shabbos after your daughter was born, I don't know if you remember, a bunch of guys in yeshiva were going around planning, okay, so by Kedusha, the Einenu, we're going to pause for a moment. Sir Anna. I don't know, I don't remember if they did it, but I know guys were planning it.
okay? Name is not Anna. Anna.
You had just given a whole shear about it, so they're like, oh, we have to do it. Yeah, I'm not doing it. I'm not messing with that thing. Does a divorce change anything?
Very good question.
Another here. At the end of the day, did you have a good time?
Yes,
Were you happy?
yes.
Yeah, did you pay all the bills?
Not yet.
Didn't Moshe Feinstein also have a psak, like, to the other extreme, to be matir people who got married, not to remain married?
Yeah.
Something like, people pass by and they say, oh, that's the Schwartz's house. So that there's some amount of ages to that too.
It wasn't because of that though.
Yeah, not
That's
sure
just
you-
something.
No, yeah, it wasn't because of that.
There was a story I did hear, I don't remember the context of it, where the rabbi wasn't from wedding. The rabbi said, everybody here are Adam to this wedding.
on purpose. That was the reverse of my case.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
So
right.
when you're talking about aging, so I been to.
I remember that last line was exactly how.
I was asked to be in some capacity. Moshe,
I have four students.
Moshe
Around.
was.
My parents were
was
for sure
not-
not. Were for sure not.
Always have 10
But they were accepted. They stopped
people standing.
because
just
my
beside
father's
his chuppah.
first cousin
He would, for that reason, he wouldn't use a microphone.
So
was an aide.
That's
Wasn't-
part.
he
So
wasn't-
it's
it was
part of it is once you have all these people
10 people
who,
to hear,
with
but-
the growth of Kirov, and you have people coming from it. What do you mean my parents were never married?
They were not married.
So Reb Moshe was coming up with,
have 10 people.
and not like coming up with ways to make it up, like he was looking at it and
Wasn't
saying,
hearing it.
oh,
Wasn't
like
really
some
hearing it.
minimal
You're
level
not
of
hearing
egos
the
could exist
actual-
because people pass by and they say that's the Schwartz's house.
No,
That
he wasn't going with Andrews. He was going with Bia.
I remember they
I
told me.
didn't know there was a separate thing.
I'm almost certain that that's what he was doing because look, you have to understand, right?
Married.
No, but there still has to
Know
be
well,
enough
Look,
egos to them actually being
Yeah.
together. But
He would go
egos
and watch
to go into the room and it works
Whatever.
out in stages.
The point is-
But that is an egos that is an egos to
I don't-
kedusha
I don't
to an
think- I don't- I don't-
extent.
Yeah, I don't-
I don't think
that's a
I don't
good
think he was
run.
going
And
with Andrews. I hear what you're saying. I don't think that he was going with Andrews.
No, meaning there's always egos.